here's a list of over 100 tips you can use to never die again in Modern Warfare 3 Zombies, to get all the schematics, and to do everything else in the game. Let's get started. There's a trick you can do in the game to actually spawn in man's best friend. To do this, you just need to grab chunks of flesh, which you can get from one-hit killing zombies with things like sniper rifles, or from the ACV escort when it runs over zombies. That's a really good way to get the drops for this too. And then you just need to bring the chunks of flesh to a dog canal. There are canals all over tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3. And depending on what tier you're in, you need to bring a corresponding number of chunks of flesh. So in tier 3, to get a tier 3 dog, you need 3 chunks. So pop the chunks of flesh inside, and out will pop your friendly hellhound. This thing will revive you if you go down. It will attack zombies for you and distract them. It's crazy useful for distracting more powerful enemies as well. Like this disciple can't do anything because it's just stuck sucking my dog. Wait, what? Next is a tip for leveling up faster. So all of us are on the camo grind. All of us want to get those levels maxed out so that we can just get started on the camos, etc. But there's a way to do this faster that doesn't require any change to your playstyle, really. It just requires you to do a little bit of forward planning when you're in the game's menus. So when you're selecting which gun you're going to spawn in with in your insured slot or just from your contraband, this little fire icon is called an XP recommended weapon, and that means that it grants you more XP if you use it. And the fire icon will rotate across different weapons on different days, so be sure to make the most of whatever weapon you're working on being XP recommended when it comes up in rotation. A tip that's super quick that you can implement in your matches is when you're driving around and your car starts spinning out and it's really awkward. It turns out that that might be because your tire is broken, right? And you don't have to just live with that. You can actually just hop out of the car, go to the tire that has popped, and hold square on the tire to repair it, and your vehicle will be ready to drive again. Now, something I know some of you have definitely been finding tricky is clearing those infected strongholds, especially in tier 2 and tier 3, because a lot of the time it feels like there's just one spore in there somewhere that you can't find. Use this tip to make your life infinitely easier and to just get those strongholds cleared pretty much straight away. It's a real simple one. It's just using depth perception, because depth perception highlights every single spore inside the stronghold, so you can zip around, use them all, and zip out, and it'll be easy peasy. Next up, the Wunderwaffe. That wonder weapon, we all know it's crazy strong. It's lightning that chains between zombies, but what some people don't know, or they've just forgotten because it's like old school zombies lore, is that you don't actually have to hit the zombies with the waff in order for it to chain lightning between them. So as you can see here, I've got my Wunderwaffe, and I'm shooting it at the ground, and it's still chaining to the zombies. And it just means that if I'm aiming at a zombie and I miss it, and my shot goes flying and it doesn't kill any zombies, that could put me in a really bad position. But if I just aim at the floor, I know for a fact it's going to get that zombie every single time. Like, there's no room for error there. And so it just makes you a little bit more consistent with that wonder weapon. Next up, the blood burner. This can be found all over the map, actually. It's got a whole bunch of different spawn points, and this amazing website actually has a bunch of the spawns figured out, so you can check them in your games and try and find the bike for yourself. When you find the bike, you'll discover that it can drive on water, which is insane. It self-heals, so it's not going to get destroyed super fast like the other vehicles. And if you run over zombies with it, it charges the bike up. And after about 15 kills, you'll get access to a pulse blast, which will kill anything in your immediate area. So this thing is crazy powerful. And I also didn't mention yet, the bike talks to you. It's nuts. Now, this next one is a trick that you can use to get loads of money insanely quickly. So when you're running around the map, have you ever found these little jump pads? They're really useful for just getting back around, redeploying, all that sort of stuff. Like, that is definitely a big benefit of using them. But there's another trick that I don't see anyone really doing when I'm watching streams and stuff, that I think you really should be doing, because it will just save you so much time. Like, you could do an entire contract, or you could just do this in 60 seconds. So when you're skydiving down from one of those redeployments, you're going to want to look around for an essence canister that's just floating in the sky. Float over to it and grab it, and then look around for the next one that will be somewhere in your vicinity just below you. And you can chain these together and get thousands of points from doing it super duper fast. And there are a bunch of these areas around the map that you can find as you roam. And it doesn't hurt to just jump up there real quick and get all those points pretty much instantly. Now, there are lots of vehicles around the map, and I'm sure you've used all of them already trying to get from point A to point B a bit faster. But one that gets often overlooked is the humble hatchback. Yes, I know it may look like it's the car you took your kids to school in this morning, or you were the kid being taken to school, but this car is pretty special because it's so normal, okay? What do normal cars have? They have car alarms. And so if you find a hatchback out in the wild, you can set its car alarm off and it will act as a monkey bomb, but with an extended timer, causing all zombies in the area to path to it and completely leaving you alone. Next is a tip that OG Zombies fans should know, but newer fans might not be familiar with. So there's lots of different special equipment in the mode. There's monkey bombs, you've got your decoy grenades, your stun grenades, all sorts of stuff. But one of the rarest special equipments is this little spherical ball of suck called the Casimir. And when you throw it, the Casimir creates a sort of mini local black hole that sucks zombies in. And it looks super cool and it's really powerful. And as a bit of trivia for you, it's actually based on the Gersh device from the Aether storyline, which did a very similar thing. But an effect that carried over from the Gersh devices and is still present in the Casimirs is that if you run over to the black hole itself and you jump, you'll actually teleport to a random location nearby. It can be pretty useful if you know the Casimirs nearly run out to just change location, change course, evade those zombies. And also it's just a fun thing to do every now and then just to mix things up. Next up, I spawn into every single one of my games with only one weapon. I never put anything in my second slot. And I've had people on my streams asking me like, hey Milo, why are you doing that? Surely you want the extra firepower, especially because when you spawn in, those unpacked guns can run out of ammo pretty easily. So to answer that question, I've set up this little demonstration so you can see not only why I do it, but you can also see that it's actually a pretty meaningful difference that it makes. So in this test, I've got 3 different perspectives of a sprint of what I'm going to call 100 meters. It's got a fixed start point and a fixed end point. And the 3 perspectives are holding 3 different weapons. One is the Silver Deagle, one is holding the tack rifle, and the other is just my bare hands. No weapon equipped. I'm going to fire the starting gun here so that all 3 perspectives start running. And I'm sure you're unsurprised that it looks very quickly like the hands are taking the lead. And once the hands reach the finish line, and yes, they're first, their time is 12:20. Now the Deagle, which is a pistol, which you'd think would still be pretty nimble, takes significantly longer. It's 13% slower when it finishes. And the tack, which makes a bit more sense to slow you down a little bit, that takes 17% longer than the hands did. So even if you're running with a weapon that you'd assume wouldn't weigh you down that much like the Deagle, you're still getting a 13% speed debuff. That means that for every 60 seconds I spend sprinting around the map with my hands out, you, holding a rifle, have to sprint for 70 seconds. It's 10 extra full seconds just to get to that destination. And that adds up in a game where you're really limited on time. If I spend 20 minutes in a match running to get somewhere with my hands out, you, with your rifle, are going to have to spend 23.5 minutes. That's 3.5 minutes you could spend on something else entirely. You could do an entire contract in that time and end up with several thousand points more than you would have otherwise had just by not spawning in with a weapon in your second slot. Next up, this is a returning trick from Cold War. If you're really attached to your weapon blueprint, you really like how your gun looks, or you honestly just don't like the Pack-a-Punch camos in the game and you wish you could avoid them, you actually can avoid them by doing this trick. Simply melee the Pack-a-Punch machine before you use it, and it will not apply its special Pack-a-Punch camos to your gun once they come out of the pap. Next up is an Easter egg that I actually found on stream. I was really shocked that I discovered this. Basically, if you go into tier 3, you can find a little grave for a fallen dog. It seems that a dog has passed away and a little shrine has been set up for it. But if you sacrifice your weapon to the grave, it will spit a couple of rewards back at you and it will give you your weapon back without any Pack-a-Punch or weapon rarity left on it. This means that you can kind of recycle tier 3 Pack-a-Punches and stuff like that at the end of your game and get some crystals from it to use in your next match. So definitely worth doing if you're about to exit tier 3 to exfil. Next up, this is just a recommendation to make sure that you're making use of this feature. You get more than one character that you can swap between in the game's menus. And so if you have a really good run and you've got tier 3 armor and a self-revive and all that good stuff, and in the next game, you're just going to go in and farm camos or something, I would swap to a different operator there just so that you can start getting progress on that character as well, such as getting them a tier 2 or a tier 3 armor plate. And then in the matches where you're trying to do more difficult activities, if you die on one of them, you still have a different operator to switch to who has some good stuff in their backpack already, ready to go for that next run. Next is a little bit of kind of myth busting, really. So in the last episode, we talked about exfilling without being inside the chopper. And I had some comments that asked me, hey Milo, do the blades of the chopper kill you? Or could you stand on top of the chopper to exfil? And so I was like, you know what? I'll put my life on the line here and I'll test this for the people, for the good of the community. And I flew down onto that center of the chopper, trying to be as central as I possibly could. And yes, it kills you. The blades kill you no matter where you land on them. So keep that in mind if you're trying to parachute in for a last minute exfil with your team. You can actually pet that dog. If you go over to it, and assuming there are no other zombies around as well, because otherwise it'll path to them, you can give him a little scritchy scratch on his forehead. And this will also work with dogs that you turn to your side with brain rot. As long as there are no other zombies around, you'll also be able to pet them. For the next tip, this is just sort of making you guys aware, the tier 3 buy station has different stuff in it to tier 2, and tier 2 has different stuff to tier 1. But specifically in tier 3, you can actually buy monkey bombs and you can buy Casimirs. And they will also have large backpacks and 3-plate vests available, whereas in tier 2, you're more likely to find one or the other, but not both. What many people don't know though, is that different buy stations within the same zone actually still have different loot in them. So one tier 2 buy station might have a sentry gun, whereas another tier 2 buy station might have a precision airstrike. So if you need different ones for a quest, you might want to try different buy stations in the same zone before you graduate to the next zone. Next up is a tip that actually comes from the comments section in one of my previous episodes. So shout out Dominion Ghost Gaming for helping the community out with this one. And also on the topic, if any of you guys have tips that you can share as well in the comments of this video, that would be absolutely amazing. And I'll be sure to give you a shout out if I used one of your tips. So gas masks can be found all over the map and they have different rarities just like weapons do. And if you take out, for example, like a Merc convoy, you'll get a bunch of gas masks and that can be useful for stacking up. Or if you go to a buy station, you can stack up on a bunch more gas masks. But Dominion Ghost has shared that you can actually repair your gas mask. I had no idea this was possible whatsoever. And it works for regular gas masks and for durable ones. And all you've got to do is just go and use an ammo cache. I know it's a little bit of a funky kind of method. You wouldn't really expect it to be something that would be topped up at an ammo cache, but it is. And that's it. That's how you repair your masks. Next, I have a tip for you that's actually shared by Sean, who works at Activision. So thanks, Sean, for this. So I know it can be a little confusing which things you can and can't exfil with in zombies, because certain stuff can go into your acquisitions, certain stuff unlocks schematics, certain other things reset every game, and it can be a bit frustrating as to why. And some things kind of do both, like weapons that you exfil with, you keep the weapon, but you lose the rarity, and it's just a little bit fiddly. However, to clear up any confusion about which items you can or can't exfil with, or keep after exfil rather, Treyarch have actually added a little icon in the game's menus. So for example, you hover over something like these ray gun plans, and you'll see that that is something you can keep after exfil because it's got these two little arrows next to its name, whereas if you hover over something like armor, that doesn't have any arrows next to its name, and that means that in the next time you spawn in, you won't be able to keep your stack of like 10 armor plates. But a quick tip you can use to quickly spawn yourself in a fresh vehicle is to simply start one of the cargo contracts, and that will open up a garage somewhere that will have a vehicle inside, and then as soon as you've got that vehicle out, you can just cancel the contract and go about your merry way, driving it wherever you want. Next up, the tip's very simple. If you run over to a perk machine and you lie down in front of it, you can pick up some spare change and just get some free points, but this will only work once, so you need to be the first person to do it. Next, I know a lot of people have been trying to find easy ways to take down abominations because they're so damn tanky, but one of them is these sentry guns that you can buy at buy stations. So they're just the killstreak sentries, you can place them wherever you want, and they chew through abomination health. And the good thing about these as well, that you don't necessarily get as a benefit with some of the other methods, is that if the abomination runs around a corner and you're like, oh, well, I can't see it anymore, you can just run over and move the sentry so it then has line of sight on the new abomination location. And you also don't have to rely on RNG to get these sentries. You can literally just buy them, especially if you're in a tier 3 buy station, it's pretty much guaranteed to have one of those sentries available. And they're not too expensive. So if you're doing, for example, a big bounty contract to take out a mega abomination, you're going to earn back the cost of the sentry gun in one contract. So there's really very little downside to doing that. This next tip is for people that have been zooming through those Modern Warfare 3 menus a little bit too fast, or they just hate the menus like I do, and as a result, they try and spend as little time in them as possible. So when you're going through the story missions in the game, you'll be making a lot of progress, getting a lot of XP. You'll unlock a couple of different zombie-specific blueprints. Like there's a whole load of rewards there that you'll get that are cosmetic, and it's all great. But you also get rewards that will boost your power in the game. You just need to claim the rewards. And that's in the rewards tab right here. And I feel like so many people have missed this. I went on this in a stream the other day, and 3 or 4 4 people in my chat were like, wait, that's there? So this is just a quick heads up. But the pro tip here is that I would recommend you leave everything in your rewards instead of claiming it, because it's not going to go away. And it means that you don't have to fill your acquisition stash space with those things. Instead, it's just like having an extra several slots that you can hold stuff in. So this tip is kind of, you have rewards, but don't claim them until you absolutely want to use them. Next is another tip from the community. So shout out Styx Dissension, that you can land between the main rotor and the tail rotor, which is not a lot of space, so you got to be really careful. But if you do it right, you won't die, and you can exfil from there as well. However, I've tried this like 20 times and I just can't make it work. So if any of you guys in the comments can let me know exactly what the right spot is, then I'll try and show it off in the next video. But for this vid, I've got an alternative, which is actually exfilling on the windshield. This one is slippy slidey, so be very careful when you're doing it, but it does work. Let's talk Golden Skull. So the skull itself drops from the Stormcaller. So if you look on your map for where the radiation is at any given time, in the center of that cloud is this boss called Stormcaller. And if you take them down, look on the ground below them for the Golden Skull, and then get the hell out of there, go sell it, and enjoy your free Pack-a-Punch. You can actually really easily cheese the helicopter in those cargo escort missions. And this has multiple benefits actually. Because number one, sometimes if you're doing one of those contracts and it's in tier 2 or tier 3, it just gets a little bit hectic having the chopper following you around the whole time, and it can be pretty stressful. So this completely takes the stress away. And there's also a story mission in the game in one of the acts that requires you to take down 3 choppers. And the kind of mechanism that we're relying on here is something you can use for that as well. So as normal, you're going to start up one of the cargo escort contracts, run over to the garage, take out any zombies that are outside, open the garage door, take out the soldiers that are inside, open the other garage door, and then drive the vehicle out. After you drive towards your objective just a little bit, you'll hear that there's an enemy chopper in the sky. And if you just want to get rid of the chopper, you can do a U-turn, drive it straight back into the garage, and just leave it there. And about 50% of the time, the chopper will literally just despawn. It won't know what's going on, and so it'll just vanish, and it won't spawn back in again once you re-drive out of the garage. Now, if you want the takedowns because you're trying to get them for that story mission, you can just do the exact same thing, but just park it under a bridge, and the chopper isn't going to be able to do anything about it. It's not smart enough to know that there's like a roof or a bridge or whatever above the vehicle, so it just shoots into the roof. And that means that you have complete free reign to just take it down, and you won't even be taking any damage from it because you can just stand next to where it's shooting and you're totally fine. Next, we have yet another tip from Sal, and this one's super useful. So I know this footage looks a little weird here. I had a bug in my game where I couldn't put my sentry gun down, and just for a second, take a look at what it looks like when I'm running with it, like when I'm in full sprint. It looks so funny to me, like I'm holding some vase of water above my head or something, and I'm like, oh no, 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 no. So anyway, as you can see here, I'm inside one of those little Aether nests, one of the infested kind of garages. And as is the case in those locations usually, and it goes for infested strongholds too, you normally require a gas mask so that you don't take damage from the gas of the spores around you. But as you can see here, I'm not taking any damage, and I don't have a gas mask equipped. And the reason for that, quite simply, is that PhD Flopper prevents you from taking that damage because it counts as explosive damage very weirdly. And so even with no mask, you can just roam around in there. You'll be able to regen your health as well, which you normally can't do. You have to leave and re-enter in order to do that usually. And so this is just going to make life infinitely easier for taking out both of those location types. Next, we have a tip from Carver King, and you guys are going to love this one. So we've all started matches, right? And sat there while the timer's counting down and just been like, I'm wasting time here. Like, I want to look at my map. I want to figure out what I'm going to do. I want to look for where the nearest vehicle is and find a contract and find Pack-a-Punch and all that stuff, right? And now you can. You just need to press the start button at the exact moment that the loading screen starts to fade to black. It's a very short window where this is possible, but if you press start in that window, you'll be able to have the map open for the entirety of that kind of drone footage that it always plays. And so from there, you can just start planning your route in game. Next, we have a super quick tip from Andrew Park. So obviously we know that you can buy gas masks at buy stations, but if you just want to avoid that hassle, I mentioned in a previous video that you can take down enemy convoys and they'll often drop a lot of gas masks. But what Andrew has shared is that very frequently, if you call in an exfil chopper, if the gas is expanding towards the end of the game, that will have a bunch of gas masks in it that you can grab. And you don't have to exfil if you just want to run on, grab the gas masks, and then run off again. Like maybe you've got other plans for your game, maybe you're going to tombstone, whatever. You can just use the chopper as a little gas mask supply and that's totally fine. Now, another tip from Andrew is, again, related to things that you can buy at buy stations. So I was talking about sentry turrets in my previous video, and I think these things are fantastic. I absolutely love using them, even when they do glitch out and make me look like a cartoon character running around with a sack of potatoes above my head. But one way that you can get those sentries to be more mobile and to actually move instead of being fixed in one position is just to put them on top of a vehicle. And then you can drive that vehicle around wherever you want, and that sentry is just going to start blasting zombies wherever you go. And some vehicles have space for multiple sentries on top of them as well, so you can turn them into a fully kitted out 360-degree killing machine. Now, in my previous video, I mentioned that you can cancel contracts, and I had X Simon X, K Kashi, and a handful of other people saying, hold up, wait a second, pause Milo, how do you actually do that? So real quick, I'm just going to give you a guide. You pull up your TAC map with whatever key that is on your console or platform of choice. And then when you're on there, in the top right hand corner, it should have a prompt for you to cancel a contract if you have one active. On Xbox, the button is going to be holding down Y, whereas on PS5, it's going to be triangle. And it's important to note, this works slightly differently if you're in a team. So if you're in a team and there's 3 of you and you try and cancel the contract, your other team members will have to vote on whether or not they want to cancel it. And it just needs 2 out of 3 votes in order for a successful cancellation to go through. So once you hold Y to cancel the contract, one other person on your team will need to also go to their map and hold Y to cancel it, and then it will cancel and you'll be all set. There's no penalty for this as well, for the record. So just feel free to do this if you change your mind and you don't want to do the contract anymore. Now, I mentioned we'd talk about getting a guaranteed 3-plate vest, right? And that'll be coming up in just a second. And actually, after I share that, I'll give you a bonus tip so you can loot even faster, just to make your life even easier in all of the games that you play. But first, to fill that vest up, we're going to need a load of armor plates, right? And there's a specific spot on the map which has a fixed spawn for 12 armor plates every single game. And there's actually also an Easter egg there too. So if you follow me, you can see where I am on the map here, and you're specifically looking for the little hut that's on the water side, kind of isolated from everything else. If you go into that hut, you'll find 3 crates that are always guaranteed to have 4 armor plates in each one. And just next to those crates, there's a little device that says that you can send a transmission to H7, and that is to do with unlocking the secret vault underneath Shaheen Manor. And I've got a guide for that on my channel if you want to run through it with me, and you can get a whole bunch of cool loot from that and take down like 5 named bosses and get unique weapons from it as well, including a Dragon's Breath shotgun. It's pretty sick. Now let's talk about that guaranteed 3-plate vest. To do this, you're going to want to look for this location on your map, and there will be multiple of these in a given match, don't worry. So if one's already been done, just look for another one somewhere else, and then go over to that with a mercenary stronghold keycard, and you'll be able to open the door and take down the soldiers that are inside. I recommend going with a Semtex because there's always at least one riot shielder, and they are a pain in the butt if you don't have any equipment. But fight through them all and then find the safe that should be hidden probably somewhere upstairs, and activate that to spawn in a couple more enemies. Wait for the safe to finish drilling, and then when it's done, you'll get your guaranteed 3-plate vest from inside. But there's only one of them, so if you've got multiple people on your team here that want that 3-plate vest, you might want to have someone else go to a different location and do another activity while you do the stronghold. So I mentioned a bonus tip was coming. Here it is. If you're frustrated about the fact that you constantly run over to loot caches, crates, whatever, and you have to sit there and hold square or hold X to open them up, and it just feels like it takes a little bit too long, and the delay is meaning that you're dying also, like if you're in tier 3 and you just don't have the time to pause, you need to get going ASAP, this tip could save your life. So shout out Seth for this one. Here's what it looks like on the default settings in the game when you're looting something and you have to hold down in order to open it up. But if you go into the game menus, go to your controller settings, scroll to the gameplay tab, and then scroll down, you should find interact settings in there, and you can play around with all 4 of these options. But if you change it to tap to interact, it's going to mean that if you look at something and just tap square instead of holding square, or tap X instead of holding X, it will instantly pick it up. It's so fast. It feels so satisfying. But the risk with this is that you accidentally pick up things that you don't want to grab, and you can end up with a lot of trash in your inventory by not being very precise. So be careful with it, but for some of you, I know that you've got ADHD brain and you want to pick up things as fast as possible, and this is going to make that a lot easier for you. So we all know that one of the best ways to get money early in your game in Modern Warfare Zombies is doing contracts, right? And I'm about to share a method that's going to get you 10,000 points for one contract completion. And this is essential because if you're trying to farm rare schematics, if you're trying to farm wonder weapons, those sorts of things, and especially if you're trying to do this as a solo player, you need to spend as little time as possible in your game on that setup and money earning process. process so that you can spend the bulk of your match just working away at those schematics farms in order to get those done. And by the way, if you'd like me to make a dedicated video on those schematics farms, then drop me a comment and let me know. So doing contracts is great, but by just slightly tweaking the way that you finish the contract, you can totally turn around that money earning process. So as you can see in the gameplay here, I'm doing a bounty contract that's going to earn me 2k, but I'm getting the bounty down to low health and then being very careful not to take it out until one of the other zombies in the space around me drops a double points, and then I'm going to straight away take out my bounty, and the bounty reward is going to be doubled. And this works in tier 3 as well. You take out a $5,000 bounty and boom, you get 10k instead of 5. And that's a huge difference. You're getting Pack-a-Punch for free basically, just by being a little more tactical when you wrap those contracts up. Thanks to Warlock Sonster for sharing that tip. Next up, if you want to take a break from the tier 3 contracts and you actually just want to chill out in the game for a bit without zombies attacking you, you might think that you could just swim in the water or something or hide on a roof, but zombies will throw meat at you and prevent you from getting the rest that you so desperately crave. However, a bowl of cereal has suggested that there is actually a way you can avoid all the zombies in the match, and that's simply to climb to one of the top of these yellow cranes. And there are a few different types of these around the map, but if you find one, the zombies will simply never attack you up there and you'll be absolutely safe for as long as you need to be safe. I'm about to show you how you can teleport into the tier 3 zone and hang out in tier 3 without any risk of stuff attacking you, and you can then parachute from this little safe haven I'm about to show you to like half of the tier 3 island, all in the space of like 15-20 seconds. It's great. So first of all, you're going to need to go to a portal entrance location. These can be found in a dozen areas around the map, but I'm going to show you an example just here inside this tunnel. The location for this is D1. It's in the railway tunnel, not the road tunnel. And another potential entrance is in this hotel in this grid square here, and it's in the top floor of the hotel in the room furthest along the corridor. But regardless of which door you choose to use, you're going to go up to the door itself to cause all of the runes to spawn in, and then you're going to shoot the following 3 symbols. And be careful to make sure that they light up as you do this. This is your first symbol, this is your second symbol, and this is your third symbol. And when the 3 are lit, you should then be able to run up to the door itself, hold square to spend 1,000 points, and open up a portal. And if you go through that portal, it's going to transport you to this hidden little hideaway inside tier 3 that you can use to plan your next move and parachute in to complete your next objective. The next tip is something that I honestly didn't really believe when I first heard it, because it's just a bit OP in my opinion. So when you're jumping into a game with the mindset that you want to be as fast and efficient as possible so you can like grind schematics, for example, in that match, you're probably making certain decisions to make yourself faster and make yourself more efficient. So an example of that we've talked about already in a previous tips video was spawning in with no second weapon, so you can just swap to your hands and run a lot faster without a weapon. And that's all well and good, but some people run into this issue, right? Where they get to tier 3, they start doing those contracts, but just surviving in that zone is really damn tricky, especially if you're running in there without armor and things along those lines, and those dogs are yapping at your heels, and there's a super sprinter that's just always really annoying, and you're sort of torn between wanting to have a weapon in your hands so you can shoot that dog behind you, and not wanting the weapon in your hands so you can run faster to get away from the dog. Like, it's a bit of a catch-22 situation. But I actually just have a solution to that problem that means you get the best of both worlds, and it's throwing knives. You can use these bad boys to one-hit kill any base level enemy, such as a dog or a regular zombie, in tier 3, which is absolutely insane because you can then retrieve the throwing knife and you basically have infinite ammo, and you can hold multiple knives at once, and you can restock them from ammo caches. Like, this is bonkers powerful. It is so insane. Definitely give these a try the next time you're booking a flight straight to that tier 3 zone. Now, throwing knives and knives, they have a lot in common, so let's do a melee tip now, shall we? And this one comes from Byman. So obviously, when you're running around with guns in the mode, you can drop them to teammates and it's no big deal. That's totally fine. But sometimes you're spinning the box and you get a weapon that would be perfect for a teammate to grab, and it just feels like it would be easier if you could just have them take it out of the box. And it turns out you can actually do that too. You just have to spin the box to get a weapon inside it, and then while that weapon is descending back into the box, melee it, and it will become available for other players in the map to grab. Next up, we've got our method to pretty much take down manglers instantly. This is so freaking OP, it's crazy. crazy. And it's kind of related to a trick that used to work in Cold War zombies as well. In fact, at one point, I'm pretty sure I had the world record most damage that anyone had ever done in Cold War zombies in one hit. And I got that using this trick. Like, it is bonkers how effective it is. So when you find a mangler, we all know, I think, that if you attack its arm and you blow that up, then it makes the mangler a lot weaker. Like, they're very susceptible to taking damage on that rocket arm. But what many people don't know, but you now do, is that if you melee that arm, especially if you're using something like a karambit or a tonfa or some other melee weapon, it will take out the mangler in 1 or 2 hits usually. And here's a couple clips of me doing it. I mean, it's just so outrageously OP. Our next tip comes from CaliBlue25, and it's an easier way to get a friendly hellhound from one of the dog houses. So in previous tips videos, we've talked about exactly how you get those hellhounds from the dog houses, and we've also discussed various ideas about ways to make those dogs more powerful and things like that. If you don't know what I'm talking about, links to those other tip videos are in the description. But what Cali has shared is that you can more consistently get those chunks of flesh, not just from explosive kills, but from simply upgrading your weapon in tier 1 to being blue rarity or anything higher, and really focusing on getting 1-hit kills. So just really making sure that you're aiming for the head, and getting those 1-hit kills is going to drastically increase your chunk of flesh drop rate. Now, those disciples will heal themselves if you allow them to maintain line of sight with you. So I recommend fighting them when there's some kind of object between you and them that you can kind of dip in and dip out of to break line of sight and prevent them from doing their healing suck beam. And the second half of the tip is that they are actually significantly weaker if you blow up their mask. You can knock their mask fully off their heads, and you'll hear a little sound cue when that happens, and that'll make them infinitely more susceptible to damage, and you'll be able to take them down super easily from there. Now, another tip, which can be really useful for disciples or just in any scenario, to be honest, is that there's actually like a bargain bin monkey bomb in the game that I sort of low-key prefer to monkeys, because I think it's sort of more effective and much more reliable, because you can find these all over the game world. So as you progress through your levels and you unlock different equipment, you're going to get to the point where you unlock decoy grenades. And I swear you just have to try them to see how amazing they are. You can carry like 3 of them at a time. You resupply them from ammo caches, and they last the same amount of time as monkey bombs. They just don't explode at the end. And they're everywhere, and they're so easy to restock. And so instead of having to scrape by trying to find individual monkeys here and there really rarely, just use decoys instead. I promise you, they are an absolutely amazing addition to your arsenal. And when you try them and they save your ass, you'd better come back here and drop a like on the video. Or you could just do that now. Next up, have you ever wanted to just freeze zombies? Like right in front of you, you just want the zombie to just stagger and stop moving and look like it's super confused. Like, I don't know, maybe your dream in life is just to bamboozle every zombie in the server. And if that is what you aspire to, I've got you covered. And it's all thanks to the humble crash barrier. So these little metal barriers are called crash barriers. And if you mantle over these crash barriers while zombies are nearby, look what they do. I promised bamboozling, and bamboozling is what you got. The zombies have no clue how to path around the crash barriers, and so some of them just stop in their tracks and very slowly turn around. Others start running the polar opposite direction to try and get around the barrier. Like, it's total chaos, but the one kind of consistent thing throughout all of it is that you are absolutely safe while it's happening. It's insanely effective, and all it takes is a little mantling. Easy peasy. Disciples as an enemy type can be pretty annoying to fight in this game because you need to break line of sight with them constantly so they don't do their suck attack on you. But there's actually a trick you can use to pretty much disable all of the potential damage output of the disciples, and it's really simple. This tip comes from Lucas Sparrow, and all you've got to do to make it work is just jump in a vehicle and then change seat from the driver's seat into one of the other seats of the vehicle. You'll then be able to bust the window, lean out of it, and shoot the disciple from there without risk of getting sucked. If you're doing a cargo escort mission and you're running up to that garage to go and get in the vehicle that you need to drive, you might already be using the depth perception trick that I shared in a previous tips and tricks video. But what you might not know is that you can actually shoot the zombies and the mercs through the door of the garage. And that'll mean that you don't face any risk of a merc getting a stray bullet on you before you manage to take them down and losing like an armor plate or something in the process. It's just a lot more streamlined this way. Now, speaking speaking of those gas stations, we all know that you can drive vehicles over to them to refuel the vehicle and also to repair it if it's been damaged on your escapades around the map. But while I play, I see a lot of randoms who drive over to the gas station and then just sit there waiting for their vehicle to top back up. But as Sizzy's mentioned here, you don't actually need to be in the vehicle in order for it to repair. So what I like to do is hop out of the vehicle, just leave it there so that zombies don't path towards it, take out any zombies in the area, maybe hop inside the gas station to loot the cash registers, and then by the time I step back outside, my vehicle's already brand new and I can drive off into the sunset. Now, for a bonus tip. There's actually visual confirmation when a vehicle is done repairing at a gas station. So when you drive up to the gas station and the vehicle's taken some damage, you'll hop off and you'll notice that it's smoking from the front grill will be kind of bashed up, stuff like that. But as the vehicle repairs, this smoke will go through stages of being dark smoke and then light smoke and then no smoke at all. And once the smoke is gone, that's your sign the vehicle's at 100%. Our next tip is also about death. Wow. That got depressing fast, but it's actually a really positive one. It's been shared by The Truth here, and this is actually something that people were using as part of an exploit a few patches ago, but the exploit part of it has been patched, but you can still use the underlying technique here to get successful exfils in your game. So if you're having a really tough time in the exfil chopper, maybe it's full of fire or something from a Molotov, maybe there's just hella zombies inside and you're stressing out like, I'm just gonna die if I go in the chopper, I can't exfil, what am I gonna do? It turns out that if you're downed inside the exfil chopper and it flies off into the sky, you'll actually still get your successful exfil completion. You won't lose all your stuff and it'll work just the same as if you were standing up and exfilling that way. Our next tip is a little bit of a reminder to be a good Samaritan because there's only so much stuff you can exfil with. So if you're in that chopper and you've got like a stowed 3-plate vest or something, just drop it for the people around you. It's not going to do any favors for you, but if you get in the habit of doing this and 100,000 other people who watch this video also get in the habit of doing this, it's going to mean that we're going to build a culture of sharing items we don't need in exfil choppers in the game, and it's going to end up paying dividends in the future because you're just going to get free stuff. Like, people are just going to drop free stuff on you. So let's share what we don't need and what we can't even save in the first place and be kind to the randoms and the teammates around us. It'll pay off. Now, our next tip is also kind of about getting stuff for free. It turns out that if you start doing an Aether nest, right, and you like shoot 1 or 2 spores, but you decide that you just don't want to finish the whole thing, you can actually just leave, go do something else, and then if another team comes along and clears the nest, it will still pop up saying that you've cleared the nest. Like, you'll still get credit for having done that. Next, we have a tip for guaranteed armor vest spawns that are all around the map. And in the previous tips and tricks video, linked in the description and on the screen right now, we talked about a way to get a guaranteed 3-plate vest, but it was a little bit more involved. So this is going to focus on a guaranteed 2-plate vest, which is a lot easier to do. It will take you like 30 seconds. So look on your map for the mercenary camp icon. It looks like this. And you don't even have to take out the mercenaries at the camp. You just need to run to exactly where the icon is on the map, and you should then be able to find a little black box, which is the mercenary stash, and inside that you have a guaranteed 2-plate armor vest spawn, and it will also give you a free mercenary stronghold keycard, so you can go do that as well. Next up, I've talked about how much I love the sentry turrets in this game in previous tips videos, but what we haven't yet talked about is just a really quick tip to make your life easier during contracts and during missions. So first of all, if you're doing a tank escort contract, whack a sentry gun on top of the tank. Why the hell not? It's gonna mean you don't have to keep moving it the entire time, and it should give it pretty good line of sight on the zombies around you. And the same applies to the missions. So for example, the Act 2 story mission requires you to escort that tank, and it can be pretty difficult and pretty hectic, especially if your teammates aren't pulling their weight, but you can whack a sentry gun on top of it, and it will make your life significantly easier. If you run into a gas station, or a petrol station, I suppose we'd call it in the UK, and you loot the cash registers, combining the 2 registers, you'll probably end up finding between 200 and 500 points. But you can instantly turn that into 1,000 points from those cash registers if you just wait to loot them until you have a double points active. So let's say you're doing an Aether nest. Don't loot the cash registers straight away. Instead, take down all the zombies in the nest and see if one of them drops you a double points. And if it does, then loot the registers and you'll get even more money out of the exact same amount of work. Our next tip is super fast, and it helps you go super fast actually. So if you're having a bit of trouble with your mobility and you want to be shooting at zombies, but you don't want the entire slow process of aiming down sight, oh God, so tiresome. You can use tack stance to keep your mobility higher. This is something that multiplayer players are probably much more familiar with, but if you're a zombies person, you probably never use tack stance. But just as Paz has mentioned here, it can be useful to make sure that you stay agile while you're taking down zombies. Next, we're going back to Aether nests, but this also counts for infected strongholds too. It's a good idea at the beginning of a game to get a quick glance going for where the Aether nests and strongholds are in your match. And then, just like we said before about getting credit for those Aether nests, you can run over to those when you know they've been cleared and just double check all the boxes for free ammo mods. Because it can be pretty hard to find the right mod that you're looking for in this game, but often other players will leave behind ammo mods that they don't want. Because most of the time, from an infected stronghold especially, you're going to get 4 or 5 different ammo mods. But you can use that to your advantage. So if you need ammo mods, head to those gas stations, look inside those Aether nests, and especially look for those infected strongholds. Now, while you're doing that, you might see a lot of armor plates on the floor, and I can't believe this, but some people don't actually know that you can carry extra armor plates. You don't have to just be limited to like 3, so long as you manually look at the armor plate and hold the button to stow it when it's on the floor. That will allow you to get another stack of 3 armor plates in your inventory, and then if you look manually over to another armor plate and hold stow again, you'll be able to stow another 3 plates. And so you can have a stack of like 15 plates if you really want to. You just have to manually actually pick them up instead of hoping that the game will automatically do it for you when you run over them. Next, we have a tip from Milo, which is a DMZ feature actually that's returning in this game. So when you're in the menus, you've got your insured weapon slots, right? And those mean that you can spawn in with a loadout weapon of your choosing. But 2 very quick tips here. Number 1 is that you can unlock more insured weapon slots by doing the missions in the game. And number 2 is if you die in a match and your insured weapon slot goes on cooldown, if you play another game and extract with loads of points and you earn loads of XP, that will reduce your insured weapon slot cooldown time. I mean that you're ready to go into that next match with your loadout weapon that much sooner. Next, I know that a lot of you guys are trying to do the vault Easter egg where you unlock the secret vault underneath Shaheen Manor and fight the secret mini boss called the King. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, by the way, I've got a full guide for this linked in the description right now and also on the screen. But what you might not know is that the Knight, one of the mini bosses that you need in order to complete the Easter egg, is actually on a fixed path around the map. So if you want to find the Knight, guaranteed, this is what you need to do. Number 1, you need to subscribe to MrRoflWaffles because I already posted this map on my channel about 3 weeks ago. But then number 2 is you need to consult the map and look on it for a moving vehicle that does not have a blue icon on it to indicate that it's being controlled by a player. If there's no moving vehicle, it means that the Knight is stationary and has probably already been taken down by another team, but that's fine. You just need to go over to wherever that vehicle is, as long as it's on this path, and obviously if it's moving, you need to catch up with it, and then take the Knight down if they're still alive, and they'll drop the keypad that you need to continue with the Easter egg. In the menu, if you go to gameplay, go to the gameplay tab, and then go to movement behaviors, and then you look for combat advanced settings, there's actually an extra drop-down tab that will open up, and one of the options it gives you there is to toggle on or off your sprint cancels reload. Now, I'm a big sprint cancel reload enjoyer, so I make sure it's turned on, but depending on the way you play the game, you might want it on or off. And another tip that I have for you in the game's menus is if you, again, go to that gameplay tab, you should be able to find an armor plate behavior option. That is going to control how many armor plates you use at once. So you can choose between pressing to use 1 plate at a time, or holding the button down to use multiple plates, or just pressing the button once to use plates until you're full. So if you don't have a scuff and you want to free up your fingers to do other things while you're playing, you could potentially use that to make the game and just plate up for you. Next, I've just got to call out, if you don't know what these circuits are for, you're missing out, man. So you can really often find these circuits in the gas stations and Aether nests that we've talked about all through this video. If you bring them to one of these deadbolt turret indicators on the map, they will shred any zombies in the vicinity for like 90 seconds. And they're like the strongest thing in the entire game. So if you want to do a tier 3 mega abomination or a bounty contract or something in about 30 seconds, then just pop one of these circuits in tier 3 and the turret will literally do all the work for you. Next, if you want to flex on your friends and show off the fact that you've got unique weapons that they can't get, you need to follow my following instructions. So certain mini bosses around the map will drop unique named weapons. Legacy will do this in the Legacy Fortress, and that weapon's actually really sick. It's basically a dragon's breath. It's got a permanent fire or napalm burst upgrade on it as well, like a permanent AAT. But there are other ones around the map as well. So for example, if you go to this hotel and you take down the little boss there, you'll get yourself a named sniper rifle. Now for a really quick tip regarding the map itself. I know that the map is cluttered, it's busy, it can be hard to find things sometimes. If you zoom all the way out, it will actually minimize a lot of the icons on the map so you can spot exfil locations much more easily. Next, a lot of people don't spawn in with a second weapon. Like, they've just got nothing in their second slot, so they've just got their hands. But an alternative option that you may choose to do is spawn in with a pistol in your secondary slot. And the reason for that is if you go down in this game, you're just going to pull your fists out and you're going to have to start punching zombies. And it makes it really difficult for your teammates to revive you if they don't have any cover. But if your second weapon is a pistol, you'll keep the pistol in your hands when you go down, and you can use that to help defend your teammates while they try and get the revive on you. Let's talk about the free Wonderwaff. So I just mentioned the Legacy Fortress, right? And if you're in the vicinity, if you're just in the area, in the neighborhood, and you spot another team working through that fortress, you don't have to join their squad. You don't have to do anything fancy. You just have to observe the fact that they've gone through the fortress and taken down Legacy, and you can then just waltz in there, opposition free, and go and interact with their reward rift that's going to be in Legacy's office. And if they've just done that mission to take Legacy down, you'll have a free Wonderwaff waiting for you inside. Next up, there's a way to get every single perk for free in a kind of extended perkaholic Easter egg, and I'm going to run through the method for each perk now. In all of these, you're going to need to copy locations that I'm showing you on my map. I'll refer to grid squares, but I'll also give you some recognizable landmarks so you know exactly where you're going. First of all, though, we're starting with Juggernog. Pull up your map, look for C3, and in the center of the grid square, you should see a little square building where I'm standing right now. And just outside that square, there are a few parasols set up and a few chairs around an old bonfire where someone was eating garbanzo beans. Anyway, you need to bring a thermite or a Molotov to this location, or just something that can ignite fire, and throw it at the remains of that bonfire. That's going to reignite the bonfire, and the little blue bunny rabbit that's sitting on the chair, who's called Mr. Peaks, is going to disappear. That's an indicator that you've done this successfully, and you'll see a rift spawn in, which will contain your free Juggernog. Now, a quick note on this is your teammates won't see that rift portal. It doesn't work the same way as the reward portals from the mission contracts. So keep in mind that this is an Easter egg for you and not for them. Next up is Stamina Up. We're going to be in the top center of the D7 grid square for this one, and you're going to be looking for this massive skyscraper. It's absolutely enormous. You can't miss it. Enter the skyscraper through this door, head straight on, and then take a left after the elevator shaft to find Mr. Peaks waiting for us once again. Your job now is to simply run up all of the stairs. It will take you like a full minute because there's so many of them, and you don't need to sprint. I literally just walked up them, and once you get to the top and you burst through the door up there onto the roof, another rift portal will spawn in and you'll get your free stamina up. Next up, Death Perception. Look on your map for the top of the E2 grid square, and in the game, you're going to be looking for this massive smokestack. Climb the first ladder up the smokestack, and then check the floor around you for good loot, because it often spawns there, and then climb the next ladder up to the top. Then jump off the railing and fly towards these 3 metal rings. You need to time it correctly and successfully pilot your parachute so that you fly through all 3 rings in one flight. To do this, I recommend slowing down just a little bit before you go through that first ring, and then pushing forward and really accelerating as soon as you can get through it, and then hard veering over to the left to finish it off. And that's your free Death Perception. Next, we're going to be in Shaheen Manor in H7, and you'll see on the map there's a big rectangular pool out the back of the manor, and Mr. Peaks is sitting on the side of the pool. Follow the route I'm running to run all the way up to the roof, and then climb on the little ledge here and hop across to the other ledge so you can get on top of this wooden board. You need to run and jump from the wooden board into the water just next to Mr. Peaks, but don't make the mistake I made here of trying to dolphin dive and then completely failing and just landing on the concrete. Instead, make sure that you hold your dolphin dive button early enough that it's actually going to trigger, and dive right in there next to Mr. Peaks to get your portal to open up and your free PhD flopper. Next is Tombstone, and this one's going to be in the very top of the G8 grid square. But in terms of landmarks, there are a few buildings around here that actually look very similar because they're in construction. So don't make the mistake of going to this building where the rope is going across, but instead come to this one. Run around the back and then up the stairs, and then up the stairs inside to get to the roof. And you have to keep your wits about you here because there are a lot of zombie spawns in this particular location. And you'll also need to bring along a sniper. Now, I've tested it with certain snipers that don't have their standard base scope. They have a modified scope, like this weapon here, for example. And I've also tried this with this weapon here, for example. And amongst getting overrun by zombies, they didn't work. So make sure you're copying what I'm doing in this clip, and you have this sort of sniper with plenty of range, and you then need to find and look at Mr. Peaks sitting on the crane. Hold your breath when you're aiming at him, and after a moment, you'll get a jump scare, and then your portal will spawn in and it will contain your free tombstone. This can be a great one to troll your friends as well. Next, we have Deadshot Daiquiri, and this one is in the I3 grid square. Now, on my map, I'm just going to float my cursor over here, and I'm going to ping a specific tomb that we are going to stand on top of. And this one's really easy if you follow exactly what I do in the video. So I'm going to run over here, and I'm going to get on top of the tomb. You can see it's pretty prominently displayed right in front of the church. And then I'm going to line up my feet so that I'm directly on top of the corner of the tomb. And then I'm going to aim up, and the center of my cursor, I'm going to kind of line it up to here. And when I've got that lined up, I'm going to throw my Semtex. And that will be a successful completion. And voila, your portal will spawn with your free Deadshot. Now, if this doesn't work, it might mean that you're actually hitting the side of the window instead of getting the Semtex through the window and into the church. And it's only going to succeed if the Semtex doesn't get stuck on the outside and it goes through the window. So run over to the ammo box, grab some more lethals, and then try again until you get it. Next up is Speed Cola. We're going to be towards the top right-hand corner of C2 for this. And you'll notice on the map, and you've probably noticed running around your game, that there's a massive bird statue there. And we're going to be using that to get our free perk. But this one can't be done on foot. You need to be in a vehicle. With your vehicle, you need to back up, and then you just need to absolutely floor your accelerator and use the bird statue as a ramp. And when you hit the ground, you should then see that the portal will spawn in just next to you, and you'll be able to grab your free Speed Cola. Now, a word of warning here. I've done this before where I did the jump, but I was being a little bit of a wuss. I didn't want to hit top speed. And as a result, I landed very close to the cliffside. And what that may do is it may mean that your portal or your rift actually spawns in kind of wedged into the wall, and you won't be able to open it and get your free perk from inside. Next is Quick Revive on the highway in the middle of H6. You're going to want to be in this vehicle for this because the slower ones are not going to work. And you'll want to park it stationary underneath this sign, which Mr. Peaks is sitting on top of. Then wait for a sound cue, which sounds like this, and immediately hit the accelerator and gun it down the highway towards the next sign, because that's your finish line and you need to get there ASAP. So long as you're fast enough, you'll get another sound cue and you'll be able to turn around, and your portal with your free Quick Revive will have spawned. First of all, we've got a tip to make your life so much easier when you're doing the most notoriously difficult contract in the Dark Aether, the ACV Escort. This one can go wrong for a variety of different reasons. You can glitch it out by picking up two bunnies at the same time and then the ACV never spawns. You can accidentally despawn the ACV by dropping a Juggernaut care package on top of it. And the zombies can just destroy it really easily. And especially if you're doing an Elder Sigil in the Dark Aether and you're in tier 5, you're going to have multiple Mega Abominations spawning in and trying to take you down while you're doing it, and it's just going to be a bit of a pain. So I'm going to give you a little combo of tips here to simplify things a bit. Number one, when you first get to the ACV, you'll often have a Mega Bomb spawn in there, and I would not bother killing that Mega Bomb and instead just activate the ACV and scoot away from it. And the Mega Bomb will chase you, but it's okay because you'll be able to put a turret circuit into the sentry that's just around the corner, and that sentry will then beam the abomination down for you, and you don't have to waste any time focusing on it. But that's not the main tip here. The real juice comes from the knowledge that the ACV running over zombies that are in front of it doesn't actually cause it to take a whole load of damage. It might look like that's what's happening, but if you pay attention in your game, you'll start to realize that the ACV mainly takes damage from the back. And so you can focus your fire on the zombies that are chasing the vehicle, and I'd also recommend putting a turret on top of the ACV facing backwards so it can continuously shoot into everything that has spawned behind and is still trying to catch up to you. And a bonus tip here is that Casimirs are insanely powerful for stopping zombies from attacking the vehicle, and especially on that third section where you're waiting for the rocket to blast out of the ACV. If you've got a stock of like 4 Casimirs, it's going to mean that the zombies are occupied the entire time, and you'll be able to complete this really easily. Next up, did you know there's a way that you can pretty much instantly get wonder weapons in the Dark Aether without really doing that much work? So there are different keys and locked doors around the Dark Aether, and this is a method that you can use to get 3 keys super duper fast. Once you finish the Outlast contract, go down this little well, this kind of hatch that you've got here into this well, and you'll enter the underground area. And then you can find a key just resting here on this box. Then take the rift just here and fly to the towers connected by the floating vehicles. And you'll want to follow exactly where I'm doing it in the game here. Land on this tower and pick up the first key that's just in the corner here. And then do a little bit of parkour, and you may need to wait a moment for the floating stuff to rearrange itself, but do a little parkour to the other tower and you'll pick up another key. You can now use those 3 keys on the corresponding locations the key name will refer to, and from those locations you can get free wonder weapons and free power-ups. Now then, this next tip is a little shortcut you can use to prevent you from having to do loads of strenuous labor unlocking attachments on a weapon that takes you forever and is just really painful to do. So all you need to do is spawn in with a friend and have them drop you whatever OP weapon that you want to use with all the attachments on it, and then when you exfil, you'll be able to exfil that weapon as a contraband weapon, and they'll just be able to spawn in with that weapon again as their insurance weapon. There's other stuff here related to this too, like if you've got people in your lobby who are talking in text chat, people are generally very helpful in this game, and so if you ask if anyone has any spare schematics, there's a good chance that you could just get some free loot for doing no work. Another friendship related tip is that the friendly hellhound dog will spawn in to the Dark Aether if you had one previously in the Urzikstan portion of your game, and it will do so even if it previously died or disappeared. So it's really worth getting a dog at some point in the match before you go in, and it'll get upgraded when you go into the Dark Aether too, which will make your life even easier. Now this tip's really fast, but it's going to prevent you from being really slow. You see what I did there? So when you grab the Aether Extractor's contract, a lot of people kind of run around aimlessly in the downstairs courtyard area trying to figure out how to get up the stairs, but there's actually a shortcut you can take. Just run over here where I'm going in the gameplay, and you'll be able to rappel up and you'll be on the rooftops right away. Now, when you're doing Aether Extractors, Casimirs, once again, are super useful. And I know some people will say, oh, well, I actually want to spend my money on jug suits instead of Casimirs, but a jug suit is 10k, a Casimir is 5k, and you can stack 2 Casimirs in one slot, and I just feel like the Casimirs are more versatile. Like, you can use them for Aether Extractors to chuck them just next to a rocket and then very quickly do the rocket and it's done, or to then save them for later if you've got open air there and use them during the ACV escort. Whereas the jug suit is a lot more limited, and sure, it helps you take down abominations, but like I've already said, I think that the Casimirs might just be a bit more useful there. Now, I've seen a lot of people debating what the best weapon in the game is. I've got this whole gameplay showcase video on the Lockwood shotgun, including all of the best attachments for it. I'll link it on screen and in the description down below right now, because I think that's the most OP weapon in the game. But in my live streams that I've been doing, carrying people through Dark Aether runs to give them schematics, take my free loot. I've still had a lot of comments saying that the tier akimbo are really good, despite the fact that they did get nerfed. And so I'm just giving you a heads up. If you're tired of that Lockwood, despite the fact that it's so crazy powerful, the tier akimbo is still a valid choice, as is the Wasp Swarm. Just make sure that you have Deadshot when you're using all these things, because it's going to make your damage much better. Now, to go back to the ACV escort real quick, you can actually use the VR11 to heal the ACV. It sounds insane, but it can heal vehicles, and it works on the ACV too. Just shoot it here a couple times and it'll heal back up. And while you're doing the ACV escort, also, I mentioned that there was a sentry area at the start, like that first leg of the ACV escort journey, but there's also a chance for one to spawn in on the final leg too, and that pretty much guarantees completion. So definitely worth scouting in your game to see if that turret spawn is there, and then saving your circuit for the last leg if you think you can get away without using it on the first leg. Now, back to the VR11 real quick. A fun fact about this that not a lot of people actually do, but it's really powerful, is that you can one-shot Mega Abomination's mouths with that weapon, even if they're not beaming and it's sort of like open in that ready state for you to take it out. And while you're doing that, you may actually notice that the VR11 in your hands has a crazy fast running speed. Like, it's either equal to fists or it may even be faster than fists. It's very zoomy. So don't assume that this thing's just going to weigh you down, because it's actually very nimble. Now, here's something that you may have always wondered about, and that's staying in the Dark Aether past the expiry of the timer. I've been terrified to test this one because I'm always worried that as soon as that time hits 0, the game's just going to end and it's going to say, well, you died, the end, fail. But it turns out you can stay in the Dark Aether past timer expiration, but the gaseous zone will start to mess you up once you lose your mask. And gold armor will not save you on this one, so just be very careful. Next up, another really powerful weapon in the Dark Aether is the one and only RGL grenade launcher. It's fantastic in there because of its ability to stun. I talked about it in my tier 3 schematics farming video a bunch, and here's an example of me using it in the Dark Aether on the Outlast contract. You can just run up the stairs and then jump off the railing and run back up the stairs and blow zombies up the entire time, and it works really, really well. Another tip for dogs is you can heal them about 33% or so by using Healing Aura. So if you want to keep man's best friend alive, make sure to heal them. Now, Greylorm is a red worm that you have to summon from an Easter egg that was added in Season 1, where you check this location in the Orlov military base to find out whereabouts there are UAV towers on the map that will give you a USB stick. You run over to each of the towers, you grab a USB stick, and then you run over to the area where you can basically summon the worm, but it can only be done at the end of the game during the Aether storm. When the storm reaches you, you put the USBs in, and the worm will be summoned. And it's extremely powerful, so you're gonna need 3 to 6 to more people to take this down. But if you do so successfully, it does drop you some really rare schematic loot. Now, a tip for if you're trying to take down worms in your game, either the purple worm or the red worm, is to buy a legendary wall weapon in the tier 3 zone, so it's gold rarity, if you don't have a legendary wrench available to use. And you might think at first that it's not worth it, like your loadout weapon at blue rarity might be enough, but comparing that to a wall weapon at gold rarity, it's pretty much no contest. The gold rarity will win. So keep this tip in mind when you're trying to take down those worms. Now, a couple more tips for doing the worms is to bring a whole bunch of sentries and set those up around the worm encounter so that you've got line of sight on the worm at all times, and those can also help you take out some of the extra adds that spawn in. It can be useful to bring turret circuits along if you're doing the worm in the dark ether, and more circuits means you're going to have more uptime on the sentry, which is always useful. And now let's talk about how you can farm multiple schematics in one match. So the red worm is going to give you some new schematics, like legendary ether tools, flawless Ethereum, stuff like that. And the Elder Sigil in the dark ether is going to give you the Dogbone schematic, the Ether Blade schematic, and the Golden Armor schematic. So to do this in one game, you're going to ideally want a purple gas mask, which you can buy from a tier 3 buy station. And you're going to want to make sure that you've got all of your USBs ready to go at the red worm boss fight area as soon as the gas gets there. You don't want to dilly-dally. You need to make the most of your time here. You also want a vehicle nearby to that boss fight, but not inside the boss fight arena because it's just going to get destroyed. But have one nearby that is as close to full health and full fuel as possible because it's going to be useful in a moment. Bring a whole bunch of sentries and set those up to assist you in the fight, and then do the red worm fight as normal. Once it's dead, grab your new schematic that it will give you, and you then have a couple of options. You can either very quickly drive your vehicle from where you're at to the Dark Ether portal and use your Elder Sigil to get into the Dark Ether, or you can use a Scorcher to jump across the map, and this will mean that you get to that Dark Ether rift very fast. So if you've only got like 30 seconds left in your game, it's actually okay. You'll be able to just scorch your way over there and enter the Dark Ether. Or finally, you can do what I've done here and use one of the teleport portals to get yourself over to the Dark Ether super fast. And it might even be so quick that you teleport out of the gas, so you don't even need to worry about your gas mask getting degraded, and you can just run to the Dark Ether portal and enter it without any stress. Next up is the chess Easter egg. This is also known as the secret vault because there is a vault under Shaheen Manor which tells you that it is locked unless you complete the following steps. First, you need to go to this corner of the map and send a transmission to another area of the map, which is all very mysterious. Then you need to take down a named boss called the Rook, and again, you'll be able to send another transmission. Then you do the same thing with the Knight, and again, another transmission from that. And finally, there's a named boss called the Bishop, and he will also drop a transmitter that you need to send a signal from. With all of those done, you'll be able to go back to the vault under Shaheen Manor and open up the vault itself. It will allow you to unlock it. Inside, you'll find a whole bunch of loot, but you'll also find a mimic in there called the King, who you'll need to take down, or you'll pay with your life.